Now, if you know me in real life, you know that I have a sidekick everywhere I go. And after 26 videos, I figured today was a great time to introduce her with today's subject. So, Freya, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here. Oh, hi, bud. Hi. She's a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois named Freya, and she's protection trained, and she's a good girl. And could you imagine these teethers coming at you? Could you imagine? Oh, tell me. Oh, you want to chew on them finger bones? Oh, no. She may look mean, she may look scary, but she's a good girl. She's a good girl. Huh. Okay, now you got me all hairy. You got me all hairy. I introduced Freya today because what a better reason to introduce her than today's subject, the 3 goodest boys in war. 3 dogs that any soldier would wish they were their battle buddy. Working military dogs, or WMDs, are the closest thing that we have to Spartans today. They were chosen from birth to be warriors, trained from day one to be violent at the turn of a switch, yet obedient enough to turn off that switch, yet loyal enough to sacrifice themselves for their 2-legged counterparts. And speaking of legs, that is also another reason why they're the modern day Spartans. They'll hump that leg in their off time. Make no mistake, they may be beautiful and playful, but they're primed at all times, to fly through the air like 75-pound cannonballs at 25 to 30 miles an hour to give you a mouth hug you'll never forget. Now these WMDs, they come in a variety of breeds and colors, ranging from a Dutch Shepherd, Belgian Malinois like mine, to a German Shepherd. But we're not here to talk about the land sharks. We're here to talk about 3 4-legged unlikely heroes that changed the tides of World War I and World War II for their handlers and their units.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you famous.
Now, dogs date back 20 to 40,000 years ago to Western Europe when early wolves were domesticated after coming around primitive man's campfires in search of scraps for food. And their loyalty dates back almost as far, with one dog being buried with its owner around 14,000 years ago. Dogs in war, however, don't have nearly the lengthy history. The first dogs in war date back to 600 BC in Rome. They used a now extinct breed called the Canis pugnax. The closest thing we have to this line of dogs is either the Mastiff family or the Bulldog line. Being a larger breed of dog, they excelled at livestock protection. However, with great power comes great responsibility, and that duty included protecting their human in combat. Now fast forward a few world wars and these dogs have an even more vital role in combat today. However, that protective role wasn't always reserved for larger breeds. Welcome to the chat, Sergeant Stubby. He was a well-educated dog, originally being found wandering the campus of Yale by Private Robert Conroy. Private Conroy was in the area conducting training when he came across the small pit bull mix with short legs and a shorter tail. So he named him Stubby. Private Conroy had no idea that this chance encounter would change the tides of war for both him and the 102nd. Private Conroy brought Stubby back to camp where pets weren't allowed. However, Stubby was a good boy, so he earned the respect and love of his battle buddies, where he was eventually allowed to stay in a don't ask, don't tell kind of situation. When Conroy and the rest of the men of the 102nd got orders to ship out to fight the Kaiser, they knew that they couldn't just abandon this little dog they grew to love, so they decided to bring him aboard. So they smuggled him in a coal bin, and as soon as they were far enough out to sea, Private Conroy unveiled his little buddy. As ecstatic as the men were of the 102nd to see the little dog strut across the deck, the commanding officer was equally unenthused. But dogs, they say, have an extra sense we humans don't have. Hippies call it vibes. I call it reading the room. You can call it whatever you want, but whatever you want to call it, that's what Stubby did. Sensing the officer was about to use him as shark bait, Stubby pulled out a trick that he had learned from the men. He saluted the officer, melting the old man's cold heart, forcing his hand, allowing him to stay. Reaching France December 5th, 1918, the men were officially on the front lines. And here, they endured daily gas attacks along with artillery shelling. And those gas attacks are where Stubby earned his first Purple Heart. Inhaling too much of the toxic fumes, Stubby was sent behind the lines to seek medical treatment with his 2-legged counterparts. But after making a full recovery, Stubby was sent back to the front lines with his 102nd family, But the gas attacks, they left a bad taste in his mouth and a keen sense of smell for the chemicals. His spicy memories of the spicy air saved the men a few mornings later when the Germans released the chemical gas into the trenches. But dogs, they have an amazing sense of smell, and this is true for Stubby and his stubby nose. When he caught a whiff of the chemical, he started barking frantically, allowing the men enough time to put on their gas masks. He would end up doing this anytime he smelt the chemicals, giving the men ample time, saving a lot of lives in the process. Now, do you remember how I said Stubby, he was a well-educated dog? Well, he had been with his adoptive family for so long that somehow he had been able to differentiate the difference between English and the angry men that sounded like they had peanut butter in their mouths. Now, this came in handy one day when Stubby came across a German soldier behind the lines mapping out the territory. The German soldier saw Stubby, so he tried to call him over for a minute of scratches, but there was one problem. The German soldier did it in German. Instantly recognizing the language of the enemy, Stubby, he flipped that switch from lover to fighter, attacking the man and barking frantically, alerting his brothers to the presence of the German soldier. Now, this little incident of Stubby biting the German Stubby Schnitzel earned him the title of Sergeant Stubby. But on the flip side of that coin, if Stubby came across a wounded soldier that spoke English, he would bark frantically, alerting his brothers to the presence, and he would stay with that casualty until help arrived. After 17 battles, 5 awards, including a Purple Heart, saving countless men, and getting a POW, Sergeant Stubby still had to be smuggled back onto the ship. I don't know, rules are rules. If you don't see a service vest, you don't see a service vest, I guess. However, if the captain of the ship couldn't recognize a good boy, the American people would. When Stubby reached America, he was treated like the hero he was. Parades, pictures, articles in newspapers. The chicks loved him, the men wanted to be him. Again, this little pit bull did more in 17 battles than most soldiers would do in their entire career. It's not the size of the dog, it's the fight in the dog. And that brings us to our next good boy. A little mixed breed terrier that probably lost his family in the German Blitz. While searching for survivors in the rubble after a bombing raid, Air Raid Warden King came across a starving dog looking for food. So, like a decent human, he gave him what scraps of food he could. This interaction, though, must have unlocked some primitive caveman mind in both dog and human, because that interaction cemented the bond that these two would have until the end of the war. King and the dog both knew they had made lifelong friends. So, the dog, he was named Rip. As Warden King did his job, there was his little buddy Rip watching every move he made, until he soon grasped the concept of what he was doing. That's when Rip decided to use what nature gave him, his sniffer, sniffing out any traces of survivors in the rubble that he could, becoming an indispensable part of the rescue operations. The Blitz lasted 8 months, and from the day that Warden King came across little Rip, they were inseparable. That little good boy worked tirelessly, sifting through smoke, ashes, and rubble, trying to find as many people as he can. That dog was credited with saving over 100 people. Now just imagine one night you're sleeping and all of a sudden your house collapses on you. You have no hope, you're stuck for 2 days, until one day you hear yapping and scratching. 2 weeks ago, you would have thrown a shoe at that dog yapping because it would have annoyed the piss out of you. But right now, that yapping is the only sense of hope that you have. As the yapping gets closer, the scratches get closer, and you can feel the weight of the rubble being lifted off you as people frantically start helping. And then the first face that you're greeted with is this good boy. Yeah, Rip was a hero. And to top it off, he was never trained for this. In fact, no dog in England was trained for this. He's credited with becoming the first search and rescue dog in England. When the war ended, Rip finally retired. And in 1945, he was awarded the PDSA Dickens Award for his bravery. That award is an award given to animals in all theaters of war that show extreme loyalty or extreme bravery. Think of it as a Medal of Honor for animals. He proudly wore this medal until the day he passed in 1946, where he was buried in Essex at the Ilford Pet Cemetery. However, for our next dog, not all heroes use their nose to save lives. Originally being named Pal, the Newfoundland started life as a house pet until one day he made a terrible mistake. He accidentally scratched a kid's face, playing a little bit too rough. Yeah, what a fucking menace to society this dog was. However, with his larger size, his family was afraid that accident would get him euthanized, so they chose to surrender him to the Royal Rifles of Canada. So Pal, he was given a name change and a promotion. Welcome, Sergeant Gander. However, this dog was about to be sent to the Battle of Hong Kong. But unlike Sergeant Stubby, Gander was actually allowed on the ship. Plus, he was too damn big to hide in an overcoat. When the Canadian troops reached Hong Kong, Gander made his presence known real quick. With his first battle being December 8th, 1941, his forces, they were surrounded by the Japanese. For several days, they endured waves of bayonet charges, yet each time a bayonet charge happened, there was Gander attacking the legs of the Japanese enemy. Now this may not sound like a lot, but remember, Gander wasn't Sergeant Stubby or Rip. He was a Newfie. That breed averages around 100 to 120 pounds, or 45 to 80 kilos if you don't speak American. Sergeant Gander was such a worthy opponent that when the men of his unit were captured, they were intensely interrogated about the big black beast that the men had with them. Sadly though, on the third day of the attacks, the Japanese threw a hand grenade into the Canadian trench. Gander, with the good boy that he was, his instincts took over. He did the ultimate sacrifice, grabbing the grenade, running to the enemy trench for a spicy game of fetch. Gander saved 7 lives of the men in the trench that day. He pulled a Bruno Mars, proving that he would in fact catch a grenade for you. After the Battle of Hong Kong, the men that survived fought the Canadian government almost as hard to have Gander's name honored with the men that passed that day. And in 2001, Gander was posthumously awarded the PDSA Dickens Medal for his ultimate sacrifice. I hope my video today taught you 2 things. First, we don't deserve dogs. They truly are man's best friend. And second, not all WMDs are like my girl Freya. Sometimes the greatest heroes come in small packages. But if you enjoyed my video, you know the drill. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and go give your dog a belly rub. They deserve it. And until next time, see you beautiful bastards in the next video.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you famous.
Mwah. Good girl. Good girl. Oh, I know. You want to chew on these finger bones. You want to chew on the finger bones so bad. Tell me all about it. Mwah. Mwah. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, go lay down. Go lay down. Platz. Platz. Good girl.